We're beginning now the Mishnah on Daf Tzadivav, which we began last week, but I think we'll be in better shape today. This Mishnah is made up of different parts. The first part is challenging, but I think the second part is even more challenging when we get to Katan. Now, the Masechet here, as I told you last week, complicates something that could be made more simple. What's happening in our Mishnah is that a man marries 5 different women, and in each case, the testimony comes in one by one that his wife died, which means he's allowed to marry her sister. We have to know that the erva of achos ishto applies even to ishto min ha'em. So you could have a case where he and her share the same mother, but not the same father. And that's also included in the erva of achos ishto. We also have to know that the erva of achos ishto only applies as long as his wife is alive, not after her death. So here's the case. And I'm going to use the art scroll, as Don pointed out very well, which I didn't have access to last week, but I have it in front of me now, as a substitute for Masechet. You may say that that's apikarsis for Berzon, because I'm always the big fan of Masechet, and I cannot overly emphasize how important it is to buy Masechet. It's not such a great financial investment. So the Mishnah, he says, discusses 5 women. We don't have to give them names. That's where the Masechet just threw us off. There's so many names here, you can't even follow who's married to who. He calls them A, B, C, D, and E. 5 women. Okay, in the language of the Mishnah, the Amrlo Mesa Ishtecha. Now, A and B are paternal sisters. They share the same father. B and C are maternal sisters. They share the same mother. C and D are paternal sisters. D and E are maternal sisters. Okay, so we'll come back to that again. Amrlo Mesa Ishtecha. Okay, so first we talk about his first wife, who's not listed in the 5, and she, according to testimony after she went to China, they testified that she had died. Nasa achosa miavia. So we said that, second, let's get the names. Right, that A and B are paternal sisters. They share the same father. So now, when we'll call him Ruvain, okay, Ruvain finds out, according to this testimony, later on we'll figure out that the testimony was not reliable, that his wife died and he marries her paternal sister. Is that clear? He marries her paternal sister. Then what happens? Mesa, they tell him that B, the paternal sister of his original wife, A, that he married now, thinking that his wife A had died, he goes ahead and he marries C. But that's achosa mi'ima, which means that C was a maternal sister to B. Now, Mesa, she dies. V'nasa achosa me'avia. So now he marries D, who is the paternal sister of D. So notice that although D is related to C, there's no relationship between D and B. It's going to skip. Nasa achosa me'ima. Nimtzu kulam kayamos. Okay, so that's already something else. So if he assumes that his wife D has died and then he marries E, who's a maternal sister, so she's related to D, but she's not related to A, B, or C. So therefore, if all these wives turn out to be alive, v'nimtzu kulon kayamos, and all the testimony from beginning to end was false or mistaken, whatever the word is then mutar b'rishona ub'shlishis ub'chamishis. Why? Because none of these, A, C, or E, are related to each other. Upotros soroseya. Now the tsaros here are B and D. Correct? That's what he writes. If the husband now dies childless, his brother does yibum with any of those three wives, because those are valid marriages, and the other wives are released from yibum chalitza requirement, as he points out, because they are what? They are called saras erba, correct? Just go over that one more time. It says otherwise are released. Oh, asur b'shniya revius. Okay, I stopped prematurely. And that is B and D. He is forbidden to be on account of his marriage to A. Right? Because A and B are paternal sisters. And since his marriage to A is valid, there's no yibum to B because that's an erva of achos ishto. He is forbidden to D because she is the half sister of D. I'm sorry. What I meant to say was D is the half sister of C. So therefore, D could not possibly fall for Yibum because she's an Erev of Achos Ishta. The ain bias achas man poteres sorosa. He says if the husband dies childless and his brother cohabited with either the second or the fourth wife, this does not constitute yibum since they were not legally married to the deceased. Hence, his true widows are still bound by the yibum requirements. Okay, I'm not sure why the Mishnah has to use the word tsara here in this case. I mean, simply these two women never were married to the brother because the erva relationship of achos ishto in those two cases of B and D make it impossible for the marriage between the late brother and these two wives were valid. So they were never married. They never fell for yibum. You don't have to use the term tsaras erva over here. Forget about the word tsara. They never fell for yibum because they were never married to his brother. He thought they were married because he thought his wives had died. He thought A and C had died. But when he finds out that A and C are still alive, then his marriage relation to B and D, B being a sister to A and D being a sister to C, once we recognize his marriage to A and C, his marriage to B and D, insofar as they are both achos ishto, are invalid. And obviously, after his death, they would not fall for yibum because they were never married. Now, Baal Shnia li'achar misas harishona. But now we're talking about a case where his first wife, A, actually died. And now he has a relationship with B, because again, you're allowed to marry your wife's sister after your wife dies. Is mutter b'shnia u'berevitz. Now he's got a problem with C, because C is the sister of B, and his marriage to B is valid because A actually died. Upotros sorosein. Right, so now that his marriage to Shnia and Revius is valid, therefore he has no marriage possibility with C or E. And those are called Shlishis and Chamishis. So they don't fall for Yibum at all. Again, the language of the Mishnah is very strange. Potros Tzorasein. They're only called tsaras in the sense that they were all ke'ilu married to the same husband. The ein bias achas mehen poteres tsaras, which means if the yavam after the death of the brother who's married now to B and D would have a relationship with C and E, well, C and E are not were never married to his brother, and they couldn't be married to his brother. And therefore, any sort of cohabitation would be meaningless as far as Yibum is concerned. They still have a Chiv Yibum vis-a-vis B and D. So whereas in the first case, the Yibum is A, C, and E. In the second case, because A actually died, then the Yibum would be to B and D. Okay, now we get to the second part, which is even more challenging. Once a boy reaches the age of 9 and a day, is bi'aso bia. The Torah recognizes his bia as valid. In the context of Yibum, where there's only one, on a biblical level, right, there's only one possible way of consuming the, of consummating the Yibum, and that's bia. It would seem that the bia of a katan, if he's one of the brothers, but he's only 9, but yet he's in the parsha bia, his bia is recognized halachically, then that would be a fulfillment of Yibum. And now, if one of the brothers fulfills Yibum, she becomes what's called the Erev of Achos Ishto of Eishes Achiv, vis-a-vis all the other brothers. Therefore, Ben Teisha Sharvi Omechet Posel Al Yidei Achim, his bia will generate an Easter vis-a-vis the other Achim, no matter what their age is. And now, instead of them being obligated in the midst of Yibum, they are prohibited under the law of Eishes Ach. What I mean by Eishes Ach means, even if the Katan later on in life will die or will divorce his Yevamot, nevertheless, they, the brothers, cannot marry her because she was once married to their brother, and the Yibum of the Katan now removes them from the Zikas Yibum, and they become Eishes Ach. Now, in the reverse case, Achim Poslim Al Yada, if one of the older brothers who are past Bar Mitzvah would have bia with the Yavama, that generates an Isur of Eishes Ach that applies even to the Katan. So that it seems at this point, before the next line in the Mishnah, that we have a ping pong game here, and it's perfectly reciprocal. And there's no difference between the Katan's bia vis-a-vis the other brothers, or the bia of one of the brothers vis-a-vis the Katan. However, the Mishnah notices the remarks on the following distinction. Ella, who posel tchila, va'achim posel bein b'tchila bein b'sof. I added a word or two, which means that we're now on to a different topic, which is called Maimer. Maimer means that if one of the possible live brothers, the Yibumim, would be, instead of doing Bia and consummating Yibum with Bia, would marry with Kesef or Shtar. One brother marries with Kesef or Shtar the Yevama, and on a Drabanan level, not the rice, we recognize that Maimer as a valid marriage. Then the halacha is that as a result of the Maimer of one of the brothers, just as we said in the case of Yibum of one of the brothers, there's an Isur Eishes Ach on all the other brothers. That's going to apply midrabanan in the case of Maimer. But here we're going to differentiate between the Katan and the other brothers. In the case of the other brothers, any Maimer, no matter what sequence it was, whether it was B'tchila or B'sof, will passel the Yevama on the other brothers, including the Katan. But in the case of the Katan who does Maimer, his ability to passel the Yevama is limited to Tchila and doesn't apply to Sof. What is Tchila and Sof? So that has to do with the sequence. In the case of a Katan, Tchila means before the other brothers did everything. He was mocked in the other brothers, and he did a Maimar. That's called Tchila. But if, on the other hand, now we get to Sof, the Achim were first, and they did a Maimar, then Ein Nifsalim Al Yidei Maimar HaKatan. Now, obviously, we have to raise the following question. If we're talking about a case by Sof, where the Achim were already doing a Maimar, then that Maimar should passel all the other Achim. I don't know why you have to be Mechadish to be that there's a psul even by Sof. And the psul b'tchila should cover us for everything. So what does it mean? Achim posted tchila b'sof. Tchila b'sof is referring to the Maimer of the Katan. When did the Katan do the Maimer? And in the case of the Achim, it makes no difference. It's irrelevant whether the Achim did the Maimer first and then the Katan did it second, or the opposite. The Katan did the Maimer first and then the Achim did the Maimer second. And the obvious question is, how does the Maimer of the Achim after the Maimer of the Katan passel, in other words, make it impossible for him to marry this passel the Yevamot for the Katan? He was the one who first did the Maimer. And we recognize that Maimer because it generates a psul on the Achim. So how is it that if subsequent to the Katan's Maimer, one of the other brothers does the Maimer, then it passes her for marriage to the Katan? He's already done the Maimer. He got there first. Didn't he snatch the bag? But the answer is that although Bias Katan is a Bia, and that's a Doraisa album, the Torah recognizes his Bia after the age of 9, but nevertheless, he doesn't have a Kinyan Maimar, which is Kesef or Shtar, as long as he's a Katan, to the same extent that a Yavam, who's a Gadol, could do Maimar. So the status of the Katan's Maimar is kind of an in-between status. It's not here and it's not there. On the one hand, the Katan's Maimar is recognized as valid if he was the first one to do the Maimar, and his Maimar now generates a psul vis-a-vis the other Achim. But on the other hand, if his Maimar was subsequent to the Maimar of one of the brothers, then it doesn't register at all. He cannot passel her to Yevamot to any of the brothers. But again, my question still remains, what do you mean Bein Basot? Basof means that after the Katan had already done his Maimon. So the Katan's Maimon could only passel him if he was first. If one of the Achim was first, then the Katan's Maimon is meaningless. But I just want to read to you one line here. He says, Ach im kadmu ha'achim, the asu ba maimer, I guess it is one of the achim, shuv ein hem nifsalim, im yaseh ba katan maimer achreya, because the maimer of the katan is only valid to passel the achim only if he was tchila. But here, kadmu ha'achim the asu ba maimer. But again, why is it relevant that the Katan's Maimer is invalid if one of the Achim did a Maimer? That's what we're going to have to face. Ketzad, the Mishnah says, how does this work out that a Katan passes b'tchila, but the Achim passes on the Katan tchila? So, ben teisha shonim yom echad, sheba al yivimto, pasam al yidei Achim. He passes the Yevamot for the Achim. They will not be allowed to be miyabim. Bo aleha Achim. So it means that the Katan had bia with the Yevamot, and then the Achim went ahead violating the din, and they had bia. Again, you would have said that, look, what happened is the Katan got there first and he did his Maimah. So therefore, the subsequent Maimah of the Katan, of the Achim, should have no impact on the Katan. The Mishnah is saying no. Even though the Katan got there first with his Maimah, nevertheless, Pasal al Yidei Achim means if the Achim, who are not allowed to do Yibum because we recognize the Maimah of the Katan, if now they went ahead and Asu Ba Maimah, we had, let's say, Bias Katan, that creates a psul on the Achim. Now, one of the Achim does Maimah. And the Mishnah is Machadish that he passes the Yevamot for the Katan. Even though, again, the Katan did a Maimah first. But to that extent, we're not going to recognize the Katan. Let's just see. I'm trying to figure out if we should at least get a jump start for 2 or 3 minutes on the Gemara, or we should end here. Let's see, maybe just 1 or 2 lines of the Gemara. So now let's reiterate that if the first wife of these 5 actually died, and now he went ahead and he had a relationship with the second wife, who is the paternal sister of the first wife, he's allowed to do that, and he'll be allowed to marry the 4th wife on this list because she's not related to the second wife. Did I get that right? 1 second. His first wife died. He married the second wife. He cannot marry the 3rd wife. Oh, but he married the 4th. So he can be married to B and D. Omer of Sheshes. The Achar Misas Rishona Vada. In other words, basically, Rav Sheshes is telling us what we know, but we only know it because of Rav Sheshes. That the reason why the Mishnah recognizes his marriage to the Shni and the Revias is because of Misas Vada. Misas Rishona was a Misas Vada. Because we know for sure that she. Okay, then, so this is where we'll stop for today. And hopefully it'll get a little easier as we go along. Wish you all a great day. Thank you so much.
Shavua tov.
Okay.